Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Andrew Snorton with Creative Community Solutions. And as you're aware in the press and media end, we get the opportunity to talk with some great people doing some wonderful things, whether it's arts and entertainment, sports, government and politics, and more. So to stay connected with us, make sure to check out our website of asnortonccs.com and click on the menu for articles and coverage to check this out. Add us on your social media platforms, Facebook, and YouTube, Creative Community Solutions LLC. Add us on Instagram and Twitter at asnortonccs, and check us out on LinkedIn and Medium, as we're so excited anytime we can dive in on arts, culture, and music. I tell you what, this person right here, if you are not familiar with Ms. Fuller, and if you're not familiar with the Velvet Note, you need to get acquainted. So we're going to dive in on this in a quick moment. So Ms. Fuller, take a moment to introduce yourself to our wonderful audience.
Good morning, Andrew, and thank you so much for having me. I am Tamara Fuller. I'm the owner and the founder of the Velvet Note, which is a 40-seat jazz club located in Alpharetta, Georgia. So we're about 25 minutes north of downtown Atlanta. And we have been here 12 years now.
Wow, 12 years. So I'll tell you what, before we touch base on the history of some of the great artists that you've had, of course, this is a great activating question. What was it about music that pushed you to even come up with the concept of the Velvet Note?
Well, my answer to that is very personal. I um, I do play music, even though I don't play it for other people in the room, but I know it. And my mother was a opera singer when she was in college. I grew up in a household in which we were often playing instruments and listening to my mother sing. By the time I was 16 years old, I had played piano for every wedding and funeral in my entire family tree for free. And I loved it. And we would also, I come from a military family. So music was often a way in which we would welcome people into our home or be welcomed into others' homes. And so I always had memories of music and connectedness and family and love. And I think that stuck with me, even though I didn't choose an initial career in music. I think it stuck with me, the feelings that I got when I was listening to music. I started my work life as an executive consultant. And then after 20 years, I went on to being an entrepreneur, starting businesses. And I've started 5 of them now. This is number 5. But the 4th business that I started was very challenging. It was, even though it was a academic success, it was a financial failure.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes. And for me, I learned in that recovery that music was comforting to me. It soothed me. It made me feel that even though it wasn't always perfect the way that I was receiving the music, live music is often not perfect, it could be great. And that was something that my soul needed to hear at that time. So when I got to starting this jazz club, that was previously, the space itself was previously a powder blue frozen yogurt shop. And as you can see now, it's nothing like that. I already had experience with what music could do. As we started out, in the 2011, 2012 decade, I wasn't the only one. There was a huge surge in live music everywhere. It manifests itself in, previously, you could always go to a restaurant, you could go to a jazz festival, um, um, and hear live music, that we were accustomed to that. But all of a sudden, music began cropping up in places that were unexpected, such as botanical gardens, such as cigar lounges, such as apartment complex gatherings. Everybody wanted live music. And I think specifically, if I can wax philosophically, I think that we as a culture, as we entered the previous decade, we were looking for an antidote to the increasing isolation that we were feeling as we transitioned to doing a good amount of our business and our personal life online. So music was a way of having a life experience that got you close in a way that we needed. And it was a good time to start live music, but not everybody could do it successfully. Everybody knew they wanted it, but you'd see it cropping up and then you'd see it dying off. I think by the time we got to the end of the decade, 2020, I counted about 20 live music venues that had featured jazz music that had cropped up and gone out of business in the 10 years that we had been in business.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not an easy business. It can be very rewarding, but it's very difficult to make it last over a long period of time. But there were some things that we did that I think were strategic. One of those things was our location. Usually when you find cultural offerings, whether it be ballet or the symphony orchestra or jazz clubs, they're located in what is viewed as the downtown area. And they're able to, snag people who are visiting, tourists, people who want to go down for excitement after they've been locked up with their family for the holidays. That's where you typically find these kinds of offerings. We put the Velvet Note in an outdoor strip mall next to a sandwich shop and a Brazilian wax salon in what is clearly the suburbs of Atlanta, the north suburbs of Atlanta, where they had not had a jazz club before. As a matter of fact, when we applied for our liquor license, it was originally put in a stack of things that we'll get to when we figure it out, because they'd not seen that application for a jazz club before. And so we were very new, it was very blue ocean, but it was very successful because, frankly, people who consume jazz on a regular basis, maybe they know it from their education, maybe it's just something that they've grown up with, maybe it's a intellectual curiosity they have. They don't want to have to go downtown to get it. They want to be able to get it right outside their door. So, the Velvet Note acoustic living room right outside the door of people who have an appetite for jazz was a good play. And it was something that was convenient. It was something that was enriching. It was something, frankly, that enriched the community of Alpharetta, as Alpharetta grew. To be able to say that you have a jazz club right down the street, you don't have to, take 400 into the city to get there, is a huge, huge plus. So that's one thing that we did that I think made a difference. And another thing we did is we always maintain the principle of diversity. And when I say diversity, a lot of clubs will pull artists from the local area only, or they'll pull artists, they'll bring them in, national recording and touring artists, they'll bring them in from outside of the community, regionally or nationally. We've always had a mixture of local artists, maybe somebody we encountered, who came into our open mic jam session, for example, and who, we decided to put on stage as a headliner, but also regional and national touring artists. We've had everybody from, children who are in middle school or junior high school, or in some cases high school, who were ready for their own shows and whose family lives down the street, to multi-Grammy award winners such as Larry Carlton and Gretchen Parlato and Diane Shore and Robert Glasper and Ronnie Laws and Tierney Sutton, and the list goes on and on. So I think that the patrons of the Velvet Note came to appreciate the fact that they could see a diversity of artists here, not to mention the fact that the audience, in terms of who you would be sitting with and who you'd be sitting next to, was also a diverse palette of people who enjoy the music and who have an appreciation for the environment in which we present it, but may not all look homogenous. And I personally like that. I like getting to know people that I might not have encountered in everyday life, whether it's the amount of money that they make, or the type of car they drive, or the racial ethnic background, or where they come from. You're likely to find someone whose first language is from outside of the United States, and someone who is living in a very different neighborhood than you are, and someone who maybe knows jazz very well versus someone who doesn't know it at all. And that diversity, that texture in the room, I think has created memorable experiences. Mark Cuban said at the beginning of the decade that the businesses that would do the best, his prediction was the businesses that would do the best are businesses that provided people with a memorable life experience. And so life experiences, in the past decade became the new asset. Before, it might have been having a boat, it might have been having a car with your top down, it might have been having a big old house. Over the past several years, it has been having memorable experiences, and the Velvet Note has been an important part of that.
Well, I tell you what, and I'm glad you went in depth and detail, because those were a lot of things that I was going to definitely tap into. But you spoke to the culture of the Velvet Note, the origins, like you said before, the wide range of artists. I was thinking the Marcus Roberts Trio is one of the artists that have been there. But like you said, the diversity within, whether it's local to international and everybody in between, diversity in regards to the audience. Like when you go, you're seeing a little bit of everybody, like you really, really are. And the fact that, like you said, it's a 40-seat venue, so it's intimate and you can really just immerse yourself in the experience. And like you said before, because that is the culture of the venue, that's what's allowed it to still be here. And even like you alluded to, there's always going to be some type of hurdle to clear or things along those lines, but you've shown the ability to clear it or clear them. So walk through this with me. You have this great body of work. You have this culture that clearly works, and it draws from all across the board. What do you see is coming up next to continue to build on this rich, and it really is this rich tradition that is synonymous with the venue?
Well, in 2024, we have challenges that we didn't have 10 years ago. So before I talk about what's coming up, let's talk about what's happened recently, if I may.
Yes.
So when we hit 2020, everybody experienced that in their own way, but we all experienced it together. And music venues and jazz clubs in particular, I think, were hit the hardest. And why jazz clubs in particular? What were people doing in 2020 as COVID hit? They were drinking their behinds off. Not kidding. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Anyway, moving right along.
In a jazz club, the consumption of alcohol per capita is very low comparatively. And this is not a country western bar, a Bud and Jack. This is a jazz club. The only people who drink less per person than a jazz club are people who are enjoying classical music. So we didn't get the same, first of all, people weren't going out to enjoy music. That's first of all. But secondly, even when they did begin to venture out again, the consumption of, the higher margin alcohol product was not something that we saw a lot of. And also, America and the entire world, frankly, had been through a massive health scare. So people just weren't out there, climbing on the party bus, getting back to clubs in the way that they may have been doing it prior to COVID. So that was a sea change. And some of that sea change I saw clearly, and some of that sea change I didn't. And let me tell you the element that I didn't see until late in the game. What I didn't see was that in addition to sitting home drinking, a lot of people were getting their live music in ways that were different than how they had gotten it prior to COVID, and they stuck with that. So it used to be, for example, that if you wanted to go see, let's say, Brian Culbertson, you'd have to buy tickets to his show. And if you wanted to talk to him and interact with him, you'd have to get VIP tickets. Or find yourself, lucky in a line of people getting signatures on their, CDs at a jazz festival. During COVID, you could hear Brian Culbertson performing through your computer. And if you wanted to talk to him, it would cost you almost nothing to get into that, online backstage room, if you will, because artists needed to make money too. And that's how they were doing it, was creating or simulating the previous environment online. Well, those types of techniques and much, much more continued long after we took our masks off. And it has continued today. Not to mention the fact that in some cases, people have learned to, frankly, just live without it. It's not how they're spending their disposable income. But if they do want to spend disposable income in this way, they now have many options, whereas previously they had only a couple. And so that has been particularly challenging for small venues and jazz venues. And the part in terms of food and beverage consumption, I caught that pretty early, but I didn't catch that second part until a lot of obstacles had come our way. We borrowed a lot of money to honor our flat fee artist contracts and to get us through the post-COVID era. And I don't mean to suggest that COVID is completely over, because I know that it's not, but to get us through, 2022, 2023. And those chickens came home to roost. So now we are a club with a lot of pedigree, a lot of successes, a lot of experience, and a lot of challenges. When you have to slow down your payments of any sort, whether they be to artists, to staff, to lenders, because of the amount of debt you're carrying, it's uncomfortable, and it's not a place where you want to be. You certainly don't want to be for long. So one of the challenges that we have in front of us is getting out of that particular situation and moving on and staying open, which I choose to do. A lot of club owners, and you see it all the time, if they had taken on debt that was difficult to manage, they would simply shut their doors, file bankruptcy, and reopen and reorganize a couple of months later under a new structure and leave the past behind, so to speak. And I am choosing not to do that. I am choosing to stay open and to address and deal with the challenges that we have in front of us, including our financial challenges, and to learn from the lessons of the past and to be even that much better. And that's my choice as the leader of this company. And I have the benefit of being in a community in which a lot of people have come to the fore and said, this has made a difference in our lives. We don't want you to go anywhere. Tell us what we can do to help you. We will help you. And that is another thing that's happening right now, is that people who love the Velvet Note, people who love having this jazz club in this particular, and this musical experience in this particular way, are stepping up and saying, let me help you. And frankly, as an independent businesswoman, it's not always easy for me to ask for help or to accept help. So that's a personal development piece on my own, that I have to tackle, but I am accepting that help. Another thing that's on the horizon is reaching out to untapped markets. So it's very, when you have something you enjoy and that other people enjoy and that really works, it's easy to, just kind of fall into the groove. And one of the things that I've noticed as we have worked to be successful under these circumstances is there's a whole community of folks who might have been, they might have been a little, how shall I say, they might have turned away a bit because they thought, well, I like some jazz, but I'm really not a jazz aficionado, or I'm not a jazz head. Maybe I like jazz-ish music. So we're reaching out to those audiences and saying, hey, come on in. This is a benevolent room. It's a great lineup. You'll find something that you enjoy, that you have an appetite for, and we're going to program that accordingly. So we're kind of expanding our horizons in terms of the music that we offer, the artists who take our stage, but they do all have in common the fact that they have been curated for excellence. Because one thing I will not do with whatever the runway is left in my life is I will not spend my time working this hard for mediocrity. I will not. So anytime we put an artist on the stage, our objective is to give audiences the best show they can possibly get through that artist. And we work really hard to do that. Our staff works hard. I don't do it by myself. Um, and the community and the expanding community have been very supportive.
Wow. Well, I tell you what, like you said before, you're taking on the challenges. It's the proverbial, you're adding tools to your toolbox, and in doing so, you're positioning yourself for what's next. And also, like you just said, looking at how do you constructively expand in regards to music offerings and whatnot, but still maintaining your core principles, which comes back to me, the intimate space, the engaging space, the enriching space where you just simply sit back and enjoy the experience on such a level. So before we want,
I just want to interrupt you on one thing there.
yes, go ahead.
One of the things that I've noticed about myself is that a lot of the music that I enjoy that would be considered to be jazz is not music that's presented by jazz artists. It's music that's scored into the soundtrack of movies. So one of the things that the Velvet Note is doing now is we're doing a series called Music in the Movies. And it is several seasons that we've put together of movies that have great jazz soundtracks. And I won't spoil it for you by telling you the entire lineup, but I will say that look for that to come. I have to tell you that, well, I'll just give you a couple of tidbits. Movies such as Mo Better Blue, everything from Mo Better Blues to Glengarry Glen Ross. These are movies that, if you just sat and listened to the soundtrack, you'd be like, oh my goodness. But we were riveted with the script of the movie itself. So it was just kind of in the back of our heads. And so here at the Velvet Note, you'll have a chance to see that entire movie with the soundtrack playing, of course, and also to enjoy a special guest who can shed some light on how those soundtracks were constructed for those movies. I'm very excited about that series.
Wow. And again, you're like you said before, you're expanding the horizons and drawing connections and bringing it to such a great space. So as we get ready to wind down, remind people, in addition to what you just shared, what's upcoming for September and the best ways for people to learn more, websites, social media, all the contact info so people can come out and not only patronize by partaking of the experience, but if they want to take that a step forward, what are the best ways for people to be able to do so?
Okay. So in the month of September, of course, we have a diversity of artists who will be on our stage. First and foremost, I want to mention that we have our Thursday night open mic jams session that happens almost every Thursday night. It goes from 8 o'clock until 11 o'clock. It's it's $10 to get in. It's 3 hours of music, which is a deal you can't get anywhere. There's a great house band, and you can come out and just applaud and be a spectator, or you can also take the stage with your instrument, whether that instrument be your voice or another musical instrument. So I want to reinforce the fact that we would love to see people on Thursday nights as well. We have headliner shows on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. A couple of notables. We have a celebration of the music of the great John Coltrane. And this is his birthday month, and we celebrate him every September. And this year, we have Grammy Award winner Kevin Williams, who will be on saxophone for that show with his band. We are really looking forward to the music that he's going to play and the insight that he will share about John Coltrane as he takes up that mantle. And we have a range of singers and instrumentalists Um, and people who, we even have an artist later in the month who goes from a Rat Pack jazz repertoire to the music of John Mayer in the same show. So we're really excited about the artists who are coming up this month. And you can find all of that at the velvetnote.com. Thevelvetnote.com, which is our website. You can also take a look at our Facebook page or Instagram page for announcements, or you can call. I'm one of the few jazz club owners who picks up the telephone and will talk to you pretty much anytime you call. I have people who call me at like 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm not always awake, but sometimes I am. So you can call 8555-VELVET, 8555-VELVET, anytime, day or night, and you'll get a chance to ask about our upcoming shows. You can make reservations, or you can just have a conversation with me about jazz or anything else.
Wow. I tell you what, I, for one, appreciate you taking time from, your moving parts to just share the story of what is taking place at the Velvet Note. So as we get ready to wind down, as a reminder, folks, if this is your first time connecting, please do not let this be your last. Like, add, share, repost, all that type of thing. You can find our full article in our articles and coverage section on our website, asnortonccs.com. Facebook and YouTube, Creative Community Solutions LLC, Ace Norton CCS on Instagram and Twitter. This will also be out on LinkedIn and Medium. So make sure to take time to check out this great space and place, doing some tremendous things before building on doing more tremendous things. So Tamara, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. Continued well wishes, and we're looking forward to seeing you real soon.
Thank you, Andrew.